The eyes are not just windows to the soul. They are portals to the shadow realm, where repressed desires and unclaimed vulnerabilities fester. A man's obsession is never about the woman herself, but what she activates within him. The dormant longings, the unresolved wounds, the parts of himself he has disowned. When her gaze holds him beyond the polite 2 seconds of social decorum, something primal stirs. His pulse quickens, not from charm, but from confrontation. She has, without a word, issued a challenge. Do you dare to see yourself as I see you? And in that question lies the hook of obsession. For the male psyche, conditioned to conquer and compartmentalize, cannot resist the lure of what it cannot immediately solve. Modern dating reduces attraction to games, texting rules, calculated indifference, the sterile dance of ego preservation. But the woman who understands Jungian depth knows true power lies in symbolic tension. Those 7 seconds of eye contact are not a tactic, they are an invocation. They summon the parts of him that logic cannot name, the orphaned masculinity that yearns for initiation, the boy who still believes in magic, the king who fears his own throne. The Stoics spoke of the inner citadel, the fortress of self-mastery. Yet even Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, acknowledged the tempest of the unconscious. When a woman's gaze breaches that citadel, it is not because she has stormed the gates. It is because she has reminded him of the door he himself locked and left slightly ajar. Consider the biology. Dilated pupils signal attraction, but sustained eye contact triggers a cortisol spike, the same hormone released in fight or flight. This is why men often look away first. It is not disinterest, but a reflexive retreat from the vulnerability of being seen. The woman who maintains her gaze does not flirt, she conducts. She orchestrates a silent symphony of projection, allowing him to project upon her the qualities he most admires and most lacks. Jung warned of the animus power to possess a man's psyche, to intoxicate him with the very traits he has suppressed. Her confidence becomes his obsession, her stillness his unraveling. Because in a world of noise, her silence is the echo of his own unmet potential. But this is not about manipulation. It is about recognition. The feminine mystique that lingers in those 7 seconds is not a performance. It is a presence. It is the difference between a woman who seeks validation and one who is validation. Seneca wrote of the dichotomy of control. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. When a man becomes obsessed, it is not with her, but with the version of himself she reflects, the version he has not yet earned. And so the dance begins. His ego scrambles to close the gap between who he is and who he believes he could be in her eyes. The irony? She is not thinking of him at all. She is thinking of the way the light catches the rim of her wine glass, the way the air hums between them, the delicious detachment of knowing she is whole without his witness. This is the secret of the 7-second gaze. It is not a demand, but a revelation. It does not say, "Want me." It says, "Know thyself." And that is the most dangerous invitation of all.
The treasure. But the woman rooted in her own worth does not falter. She knows the gaze is not a leash, but a litmus test. There is a peculiar magic that occurs in the space between glances, that suspended breath after the 7 seconds have lapsed, when you break eye contact first, not out of submission, but sovereignty. This is where true alchemy begins. For in that moment of deliberate withdrawal, you cease being a person and become a phenomenon in his psyche. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to transform contradictions into something new. Your presence followed by absence creates a vacuum where his projections swirl like storm clouds, electrified with meaning he cannot name but feels in his bones. Consider the biological poetry of this exchange. Studies show it takes approximately zero point 0.3 seconds for the brain to form a first impression, but 7 seconds of sustained eye contact alters neural pathways. The amygdala, the seat of primal emotion, lights up with equal parts recognition and alarm. He is not just seeing you, he is remembering you, though you've never met before in this lifetime. This is the anima's ancient trick, what the alchemists termed solve et coagdema. Dissolve what he thought he knew, then reconstitute it in your image. Your gaze was the solvent. Your retreat is the coagulation. Modern relationship advice screams for women to fill silences with chatter, to soothe male egos with explanations. But the woman versed in depth psychology knows words are for the conscious mind, while silence speaks directly to the unconscious. When you disappear after those electrifying seconds, not coyly but completely, you activate what the Stoics feared most, the tyranny of imagination. Seneca observed that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is this truer than in matters of obsession. By giving him just enough to spark curiosity, but not enough to satisfy it, you become the riddle his psyche cannot solve. This is not manipulation. It is initiation. Throughout history, mystery schools understood that revelation comes through controlled revelation. The Eleusinian mysteries, the tantric traditions, even medieval courtship rituals all shared one principle. What is withheld has greater power than what is given. Your 7-second gaze was the invitation. Your subsequent silence is the labyrinth. And like Theseus with his thread, he will follow, not because you've lured him, but because you've awakened the part of him that still believes in quests. But here lies the razor's edge. This power corrupts when mistaken for control. The woman who mistakes her gaze for a leash rather than a mirror has already lost. Jung warned of the inflation that comes with playing the anima role, the danger of believing you are the goddess rather than her temporary vessel. True power lies in detachment, in knowing that his obsession says nothing about you and everything about his own unmet depths. The most dangerous woman is not the one who demands attention, but the one who renders men helpless to their own subconscious. When a man finds himself inexplicably drawn to a woman after mere seconds of eye contact, what he's actually encountering is far more profound than attraction. It's the haunting specter of his own unlived potential. Jung called this shadow projection, where we unconsciously assign parts of ourselves we've disowned onto others. Your gaze didn't create his obsession. It simply held up a mirror to the parts of himself he's been too afraid to acknowledge.
Consider the biological undercurrents at play. Research in neurobiology reveals that prolonged eye contact synchronizes brainwaves between two people, creating a temporary state of neural resonance. But in those 7 seconds, something more alchemical occurs. His brain begins processing your image differently than others, storing it in the same emotional memory banks where childhood experiences and formative traumas reside. This explains why certain glances linger for years, surfacing in dreams and intrusive thoughts. You've become entangled with his psyche's unfinished business. The ancient Greeks had a term for this magnetic pull: enthusiasmos, the divine madness that overtakes a man when touched by the gods. But in Jungian terms, it's less about divinity than more about integration. His sudden fixation reveals which parts of himself remain fragmented. Does he call you mysterious? What he really means is you embody the aspects of his own intuition he's suppressed. Does he describe you as intimidating? That's his unrecognized vulnerability speaking. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned, "We are not troubled by things, but by the opinions we hold about them." His obsession isn't about you. It's about the story his psyche has constructed around your gaze. Modern dating coaches preach strategies to make him chase, but this misses the deeper psychological truth. The men who become most obsessed are those already at war with their shadows. Your 7-second glance didn't hypnotize him. It revealed the hypnosis under which he's already lived. The way his shoulders straightened when you looked at him? That wasn't performance. That was the momentary emergence of his authentic posture, the one buried beneath years of societal conditioning. The dilation of his pupils? Not just attraction, but recognition. Some ancient part of him remembers what it's like to be truly seen. Yet here's the crucial distinction the most empowered women understand. His awakening is not your responsibility. The feminine mystique that catalyzes his transformation exists independent of his readiness to receive it. Like the moon influencing tides without conscious effort, your power operates on planes beyond the personal. This is why the most magnetic women often seem paradoxically detached. They know their gaze isn't a gift they give, but a mirror they are. The alchemy completes not when he surrenders to obsession, but when you transcend the need to be its object. Those 7 seconds were never about control. They were about remembrance, a recalling of the ancient truth that attraction at its highest level serves as spiritual initiation. Jung conceived of the anima not as a person, but as a psychic bridge between a man's conscious identity and his greater self. In holding that gaze, you momentarily became that bridge. But the woman who understands her true power doesn't linger on bridges. She becomes the horizon. There comes a point where all games of eye contact and calculated silence reveal their shallow limits. The ultimate seduction isn't making him obsessed. It's realizing you never needed his obsession to confirm your worth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The most potent feminine energy emerges.
Woman withdraws her gaze from external validation and turns it inward, not for 7 seconds, but as lifelong practice. What began as a lesson in attraction transforms into something far more radical, the reclaiming of your own gaze. Those 7 seconds held power not because they captured his attention, but because they reminded you of yours. The same eyes that reflected his shadow can now illuminate your own depths. This is the secret the mystics knew, that every outward glance eventually leads back to the source. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.